We often say that we know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the bottom of our own ocean. This is not an exaggeration. We have mapped 100% of Mars to a resolution of mere feet. We have mapped only 5% of the ocean floor to that same detail. The rest is a void, a high-pressure, pitch-black wilderness that covers 70% of the planet. Because we cannot see through the water, we listen. For decades, scientists have been eavesdropping on the deep. They hear the songs of whales, the grinding of tectonic plates, and the rumble of underwater volcanoes. It is a noisy place. But in the summer of 1997, the microphones picked up something else. It wasn't a whale, it wasn't a submarine. It was a sound so loud, so massive, and so organic in its frequency profile that it baffled the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for years. They called it the bloop, and for a terrifying moment in history, the data suggested that something larger than a blue whale, something impossible, was waking up in the southern Pacific. To understand the sound, we have to look at the machine that heard it. During the height of the Cold War, the United States Navy was terrified of Soviet nuclear submarines. These subs could sit silently off the coast of California or New York and launch a strike before anyone knew they were there. To counter this, the Navy built a secret weapon, SOSUS, the Sound Surveillance System. They laid thousands of miles of hydrophone cables across the floor of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. These weren't normal microphones. They were designed to detect the faint hum of a propeller engine from hundreds of miles away. When the Cold War ended, the Navy didn't pull the cables up. Instead, they gave partial access to scientists. Oceanographers used them to track whale migration and monitor earthquakes. In 1997, researchers from NOAA's VENTS program were monitoring the hydrophones in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. On May 19th, at roughly 5:00 p.m. GMT, the sensors lit up. A low-frequency sound, rising quickly in pitch, swept across the array. But it wasn't just one sensor. The sound was detected by sensors nearly 3,000 miles, 4,800 kilometers, apart. Let's put that in perspective. If you screamed in New York and someone heard you in Los Angeles, that is the scale of energy we are talking about. To be heard clearly across that distance underwater requires a noise source of cataclysmic power. The first thing the scientists did was rule out the usual suspects. Was it a submarine? No. Man-made engines are rhythmic and mechanical. They have a constant frequency. This sound had rapid variations. Was it a bomb? No. Explosions are sudden spikes of noise that decay quickly. This sound lasted for over 1 minute. It had a structure. It rose in frequency, almost like a groan or a call. Was it a biological animal? This was the frightening part. The spectrogram, the visual fingerprint of the sound, looked biological. It mimicked the frequency shifts of a marine mammal call, specifically a blue whale. But here is the math problem. The blue whale is the largest animal to ever exist in the history of Earth. Louder than a dinosaur, louder than a jet engine. A blue whale call can reach 188 decibels. But a blue whale call cannot travel 3,000 miles with that level of clarity. The physics of water absorption would mute it. Dr. Christopher Fox, a lead scientist at NOAA at the time, famously stated that while the signature looked biological, the source would have to be several times larger than a blue whale. We are talking about an animal hundreds of feet long, a leviathan. The mystery deepened when researchers triangulated the origin of the sound. The triangulation pointed to a remote stretch of the South Pacific Ocean, west of the southern tip of South America. The coordinates were roughly 50 degrees south, 100 degrees west. This location is agonizingly close to a fictional location known to horror fans worldwide. In 1928, H.P. Lovecraft wrote The Call of Cthulhu. In the story, he gives the specific coordinates for the sunken nightmare city of R'lyeh, where the dead god Cthulhu sleeps and waits to rise. Lovecraft placed his city at 47 degree 9, 126 to cutting 43 dwarf. The bloop originated just a few hundred miles from Lovecraft's coordinates. A massive, organic-sounding groan rising from the deep, right where a horror writer predicted a giant monster would be sleeping. The internet, naturally, went insane. For years, the bloop became the holy grail for cryptozoologists. It was proof that the megalodon, or the kraken, or something even worse, was down there. But science eventually caught up with the imagination. NOAA continued to monitor the oceans. Over the next decade, they deployed more sensors closer to Antarctica. They began to record other sounds that were definitely geological, but shared the biological profile of the bloop. They realized that the bloop wasn't a call, it was a crack. Specifically, it was an ice quake. When a massive iceberg calves off a glacier in Antarctica, or when two massive ice sheets grind together, they create a shearing sound. Because the ice is so massive, millions of tons, the frequency is incredibly low. When they sped up the recordings of ice quakes, they matched the profile of the bloop almost perfectly. The organic rise in pitch wasn't an animal's throat opening. It was the speed of the crack propagating through the ice. The sound was loud enough to travel 3,000 miles because the ice sheet acts like a massive speaker diaphragm, coupling with the water to transmit energy efficiently. In 2012, NOAA officially changed the classification of the bloop from unidentified to icequake. The monster was just a melting glacier. The bloop is solved, but it isn't the only sound. There is Julia, a sound recorded in 1999 that sounds like a woman cooing. There is Slow Down, a sound recorded in 1997 that lasted for 7 minutes. There is the Upsweep, a seasonal sound that has been heard since 1991 and changes with the time of year. While the bloop was likely ice, these other sounds remain contentious. The ocean is a chaotic, loud, terrifying place. We have ruled out Cthulhu for now, but remember, we have still only checked 5% of the floor. There is plenty of room down there for something else to be hiding.